Hey losers, I'm Coral. Welcome to my channel. If you're joining me for the first time, I like to read things that are dark and wicked. Mostly horror, but I dabble in a little of this and that, as long as it's dark and wicked. So if you're into that, welcome to the party. It's been a while since I've filmed. I've had, just an unfortunate set of circumstances health-wise. Like, very minor health things, but just, one after another. And it's like, oh my god, I got fucking pink eye. When was the last time you've had pink eye? Like, elementary school? So, anyway, I am here today feeling much better, and I am here with a pile of books written by fabulous women that I'd like to tell you all about. The first half of these will be books where I've read multiple books by this author. This author is somebody that, basically is an auto-buy author for me. And then the second half of this will be books from female authors where I've read one and really enjoyed it and am looking forward to reading more, whether it's a debut or I just haven't read any more of their books yet. So let's get into this. First author here I'd like to talk about is Alissa Nutting. This is her book Made for Love. And while she is not, I don't think, firmly a horror author, she definitely writes things that are more transgressive, things that are disturbing. This one is a little bit funny. Her other book, Tampa, is definitely not. But I really love her writing, what she's come up with, even if some of it is so disturbing I don't ever want to read it again. It's so well done. This one is on the goofier side, I feel like, but there's also things in it that are disturbing. We're mostly following a woman named Hazel who's trying to escape her husband, who is the founder of this tech company, and he wants her to do some strange things with some of his technology, and she escapes to Florida. Both of her books take place in Florida. She goes to move in with her retirement age father, and he doesn't really want her there because she's intruding on his new relationship with a lifelike sex doll. So it's a little bit quirky. There's also a man who is in love with a dolphin. And yeah, it's a weird one, but her writing, so good. Then there is Tananarive. I've read a few of her stories, including this collection, The Wishing Pool, which is one of the best short story collections I've read. Her work is just so heartfelt. I'm thinking of the other two books I've read of hers, The Between and The Reformatory, which was, I think a 2023 release. Both just, the character development is so good. She's somebody who makes you care about the characters she's writing, and that's no different even in her short stories. Okay, I know I've got to be a little bit quicker here. We've got a lot to cover. Next is Rachel Harrison. This is her book Such Sharp Teeth, which is a werewolf novel. This was my introduction to her work, even though it was not her first book. Even with these more popular tropes, she's written about witches, werewolves, vampires. Even with things that we've already seen before, she manages to make it such an interesting story. Her main characters are so excellent, and they're, usually women who are my age, early 30s, maybe sometimes a little bit older, a little bit younger, but around there, and they've just got shit to deal with, and it's don't we all? So they're very easy to connect with as a woman that age, myself, and I just find myself being very eager to pick up her books. Next we have Samantha Kolesnik. I've read two of her novella-length books. The two that I've read from her are both very hard-hitting, not necessarily feel-good books, but ones that make you think. I think true crime is very introspective. There is a young woman who is a character in this, a teenage girl, escaping an abusive life, but going on to do terrible things herself. And there's just a lot of perspective on how the world treats young girls and young women that I found really poignant, and I have only read through this once, but I'm like kind of eager. I wish I had gone through and like annotated it a little bit, so I think I'm gonna have to do that soon, because there's just like a few passages in here that it's like you read it, you digest it, and then you're like, oh, and you just kind of have to stare into space for a second because it's too real, you know? Then we have Sarah Langan. This is her book, Good Neighbors, which, oh my god, I'm so in love with this book, and the book that she wrote after this, A Better World. She's written other things. I actually read her for the first time when I was a teenager. I read her book, Audrey's Door, and I don't have that copy of it anymore. I wish I did, but I liked that, and then it was like I just never thought about her again until she published this a couple years ago. I think this was like 2021 maybe, or 2022, and I was like, oh, I recognize that name. And I can't say the same for Audrey's Door, but the last two books that she's written, Good Neighbors and A Better World, deal with this. It's not like straight out horror, but it's kind of a horror of like, this could happen in real life, and that's frightening. Like the way people interact with each other and relationships and stuff like that. This one is about a small neighborhood that start to turn on a family in the neighborhood. They get blamed for this like enormous thing. It gets very intense, and it's like you hear stories about this, about, I mean, there's a what's that channel that does true crime now? Investigation Discovery, is that it? ID? But they have a series on there that's like about neighbors hurting each other, you know? So it's like, this is too real. And her book, A Better World, is like dystopian, and this one is a little bit too, like in the background, there's these things about like the climate getting hotter and things like that, and you're like, like we're just feet away from this. It's terrifying to think about. Like, that kind of stuff haunts me. Then last from my authors I've read multiple books of and really enjoyed, we have Laurel Hightower. This is her book, Below. I think in her books, her main characters grow a lot. And in this one especially, this woman is kind of lost after a car accident, and she sees this creature, and even just being in the car, going on the trip she was going on was like a huge step for her, and she just continues to grow throughout this book, even though there's like some really fucking spooky shit going on. I mean, it's Mothman, but very creepy, Appalachian Gothic kind of stuff. And I just really love her main characters. This is another one where I would like to go back through and annotate it, because another one where she just has passages that really, really struck me. Okay, and now on to authors that I have read one time and I would like to read more of, because I absolutely love the way they wrote these books. First, Sister Maiden Monster by Lucy Snyder. This is an apocalyptic story that's set up in a way that I really like. There is a, like, just as the apocalypse is happening part of the story. There's like a little bit after the apocalypse has started and how people are kind of managing it in their daily lives. And then there's like almost like a post-apocalyptic part of the story. And it's all broken up by 3 different characters. And part of why I like this so much, it was like brutal and grisly, and the apocalypse itself, like the mechanisms of that and what happens, like how this becomes an apocalyptic event, was really interesting. But the characters all felt so different from each other, and I feel like that takes some talent to do. Then there's Such Lovely Skin by Tatiana Schlote-Bonne. This was a debut that came out last year. There's actually 3 on my pile that were like that, books that came out last year that like really blew me away. This one is YA, I guess, but it's like, I don't feel like, I mean, the characters are teenagers. They act like teenagers, but in a way that I didn't find annoying, and I thought was probably a little realistic for teenagers these days. I mean, like, my daughter is just nearly a teenager, right? And these are like definitely older high school students in this. So it's like, I don't quite know, but like I kind of know, I guess. I mean, I have nieces who are a little bit older, but anyway, the whole point of this is that I thought this was so much fun. I picked this up and I was like, do not speak to me. Anybody? Nobody speak to me. I am finishing this book. Just like literally from the first page. And that does not happen often. A lot of the time, I feel like I have to, you know, be very attentive to what's happening in the story, because it's very easy for me in the beginning of books to become distracted by other things and to really like have to pick this up a couple times before I really get into like the tempo of the book. And this was not that. This is about a wannabe Twitch streamer. Her baby sister died. I don't know, I feel like maybe it was less than a year ago in the time span of the book. She's harboring this deep dark secret about her sister's death and her actual involvement in it. But you don't really find out what it is until the end of the book. There is a person that looks like her impersonating her, and she has to get to the bottom of it. But this is such a great, really well-paced, interesting book. And then we have Alison Rumfitt and Tell Me I'm Worthless. I actually just this morning got a notification that the audio copy of Brainworms was up on my holds, so I haven't started that yet, but oh god, I want to. So as of now, she's still on my I've only read one of her books list, and I want to read more. This is a brutal story. I would say like kind of splatterpunk, I guess, because it's brutal, but it has a message. It's definitely like transgressive, but it's not just like horrible to be horrible. I really love this because there are two characters and they have these conflicting stories about something that happened between them and a third friend at this house. The third friend has disappeared. Then you have like these two, and they haven't spoken since because each of them says that the other did this terrible, like unforgivable thing to the other. But they're both saying that about each other, and it's like, well, who's telling the truth? And you really get to the bottom of it, but like, oh my god. It is a rough one, but so good. And I can't wait to read Brainworms. I also read last year Mae Murray's debut novel, I'm Sorry If I Scared You. This was a really strange book. I think that there was a lot of heart in it. I think it is unlike anything I've read before. I think it feels kind of fever dreamy. It's a little bit like maybe just like a touch of humor in it, even though there are really sad things happening to people, but that gives it a little bit of levity. It's not just like all stressy, depressy, and a really vindicating ending. So I feel like it was, what else? Oh yeah, Mae Murray's writing itself is really nice. There were a lot of passages that I marked in here because I just thought that they were really beautiful without being over the top flowery like somebody like Cassandra Caw, which is not necessarily my thing. And that's okay. But I think that Mae Murray, her writing is very balanced and nice, and I really enjoyed this story, and I can't wait to see what else she comes up with. We also have Anne Heltzel's Just Like Mother, and I did not give this a 5-star rating when I read it because I think the ending, I guess this is me. I just didn't quite like how it ended. I felt like it was just a little too neatly wrapped up. Like, it was like she was like, okay, we're at the end now, but, you know, but I thought the rest of this was so good. And it was a strange story that kept me guessing, and it was like really sinister at the core of it. This is about a woman who grew up in a strange cult and, you know, as a young child, obviously separated from her family, put into foster care, so she lost contact with everybody. But she's reunited with a cousin she was very close to, and her cousin's living like this really charmed life. And Maeve is like, the main character Maeve is like, wow, this is incredible. But then you find out that things are not as they seem, of course. So just a really good book. I really enjoyed this. Last on my list, but certainly not least, we have Emma E. Murray's Crushing Snails. Emma Murray has other things out. I know recently she had I believe a short story collection come out. I just haven't gotten to it yet. This was, I believe, her debut novel, but she, I think, had another collection out before this too, but this is the only thing I've read of hers. Written very well. There are some highly disturbing scenes in this that made me so upset, and like I felt very emotional about it. We're following a teenage girl named Winnie who is in an abusive household, and she starts coping with that by hurting smaller things, and that really escalates. And throughout the story you get these interview excerpts because Winnie has gone missing now, and you know, we have these people close to her saying like, Winnie would not do this thing, and you don't really know what the thing is, but you know that Winnie's missing and she's hurting things, so you speculate, obviously. Also, it's like, you know, Winnie is doing these things to harm other living creatures, but you still like want to believe that she wouldn't, because Winnie is written in such a way, such a complex way, and it's just fucking devastating. So I would really like to have my soul stomped on again. Thanks, Emma. Those are some of my favorite female horror authors, and some books by female horror authors that just like really connected with me. So I would love to know, have you read any of these? Do you have any favorite female horror authors? I know in this genre it's really easy to get hung up on guys. I mean, for a long time this genre was dominated by the John Sauls and the Stephen Kings and the Ramsey Campbells and the Robert McCammons and the Richard Laymans. But there are so many other people out there. So if all you're reading is those old fogies, I really invite you, I mean, I like those books too, but I really invite you to pick up something new, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye!